The birth of Richard III, 1452, a turning point in England's turbulent history. On October 2, 1452, Richard III was born at Fotheringhay Castle in Northamptonshire, England. The youngest son of Richard Plantagenet, Duke of York, and Cecily Neville, Richard's arrival into a high-ranking aristocratic family placed him at the heart of one of England's most contentious periods, the Wars of the Roses. His birth would ultimately set the stage for a short yet significant reign as King of England and leave a lasting impact on the country's historical narrative. Early life and family dynamics. Richard's early years were shaped by the complex political dynamics of the Wars of the Roses, a civil conflict between the houses of Lancaster and York, both vying for control of the English throne. His father, Richard, Duke of York, was a claimant to the throne through his descent from Edward III. The Duke's struggle for power against the Lancastrian King Henry VI and his powerful queen, Margaret of Anjou, would eventually lead to war. Richard's family was distinguished and powerful. His mother, Cecily Neville, was known as the Rose of Raby due to her aristocratic lineage and influence. She was the daughter of Ralph Neville, 1st Earl of Westmoreland, and Joan Beaufort, the granddaughter of John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, the 4th son of Edward III. This lineage tied Richard not only to the Yorkist cause but also to the broader Plantagenet dynasty, giving him a profound claim to the throne. During his childhood, Richard would witness the rise and fall of his father's political fortunes. The Yorkist cause was initially successful, but the tides of war were ever-changing. The First Battle of St. Albans in 1455 marked the start of the armed conflict between the Yorkists and Lancastrians, and Richard's life would be intertwined with this conflict from the very beginning. The impact of the Wars of the Roses. The Wars of the Roses profoundly influenced Richard's upbringing. Following his father's death at the Battle of Wakefield in 1460, Richard was sent to the Low Countries for safety, along with his brother George. While their eldest brother Edward assumed leadership of the Yorkist cause and later became King Edward IV in 1461, Richard's exile would shape his character, giving him a unique perspective on loyalty, power, and betrayal. Edward IV's eventual triumph against the Lancastrians enabled Richard's return to England. The Yorkist victory established a sense of stability, and Richard, as the younger brother of the king, began to receive titles and lands. He was created Duke of Gloucester in 1461 and was inducted into the Order of the Garter, England's most prestigious chivalric order. Edward IV's reign allowed Richard to develop his skills as a military commander and politician, proving himself a capable and loyal supporter of his brother's rule. Rise to power and the princes in the Tower. Richard's path to kingship, however, was neither straightforward nor uncontroversial. After the death of Edward IV in April 1483, the succession of his 12-year-old son, Edward V, was complicated by factional struggles within the court. Richard, who had been appointed Lord Protector, quickly moved to consolidate his power. He arrested the young king's maternal relatives, the Woodvilles, and assumed control of Edward V and his younger brother, Richard, Duke of York. In a dramatic series of events, Richard declared the marriage of Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville invalid, rendering their children illegitimate. This declaration paved the way for Richard to claim the throne, and he was crowned Richard III on July 6, 1483. His controversial rise to power was further marred by the mysterious disappearance of the two young princes in the Tower of London. The fate of Edward V and his brother remains one of England's greatest historical mysteries, casting a long shadow over Richard's legacy. Reign and reform. Despite the controversy surrounding his accession, Richard III's reign was marked by significant administrative reforms and attempts to establish himself as a just ruler. He enacted several laws to curb corruption and protect the rights of the common people, including the improvement of bail procedures and the regulation of trade practices. Richard's reforms were aimed at strengthening the administration of justice and addressing grievances that had been neglected during Edward IV's reign. Richard also sought to establish his authority and legitimacy through diplomatic and military means. He maintained England's position in France and sought alliances with Scotland and Brittany. His brief reign, however, was constantly threatened by unrest, particularly from supporters of the Lancastrian cause and disaffected Yorkists. The Battle of Bosworth and Richard's death. Richard's downfall came at the Battle of Bosworth Field on August 22, 1485. His opponent, Henry Tudor, later crowned Henry VII, had a tenuous claim to the throne through his mother, Margaret Beaufort. However, his victory was secured by strategic alliances and defections from Richard's supporters. Notably, Lord Stanley, who had initially pledged support to Richard, switched sides during the battle, decisively turning the tide against the king. Richard's death at Bosworth marked the end of the Plantagenet dynasty and the beginning of the Tudor era. He was the last English king to die in battle, and his demise symbolized the culmination of the Wars of the Roses. With Henry VII's victory, the two warring houses of Lancaster and York were united through marriage, bringing a period of relative stability to England after decades of turmoil. Richard III's legacy. The legacy of Richard III remains one of the most contentious in English history. Depicted by William Shakespeare as a villainous, deformed tyrant, Richard's image has been heavily shaped by Tudor propaganda. However, recent re-evaluations of his life and reign suggest a more nuanced figure, one who was shaped by the brutal realities of his time, yet sought to establish a fair and effective rule. The discovery of Richard III's remains in 2012 beneath a car park in Leicester reignited public interest in his life and reign. His reburial in 2015 at Leicester Cathedral was attended by thousands, reflecting the enduring fascination with his story. Richard's life, from his birth in 1452 to his death at Bosworth, continues to captivate historians and the public alike, serving as a poignant reminder of the complexities of power, loyalty, and ambition in medieval England. In conclusion, the birth of Richard III in 1452 heralded the arrival of a monarch whose life and reign would be marked by controversy and conflict. His legacy, shaped by both historical events and cultural portrayals, remains a subject of intense debate, illustrating the enduring impact of his short but eventful rule on England's history. Thanks for listening. Like and comment. And please subscribe, as that will help us get more videos out to those interested in the Middle Ages. See you next time on Medieval Chronicles 1066. Stay curious.